Happy Friday. If it's Friday, that means it's all things advocacy with AARP North Dakota. Josh Askvig, State Director, here with you. With me, as always, is our Advocacy Director, Janelle Moos. Janelle, I'm going to jump right into it. We had a big win literally less than an hour ago. So why don't you tell people about it?
Yes, we did. We're super excited to announce that one of our wholesale importation bills that will help lower prescription drugs for you and so many other North Dakotans passed on the Senate floor today by quite a wide margin. So we're super excited about it. It allows North Dakota to partner with other states to develop a wholesale drug importation program. So this is something we've been working so hard, and we're so excited to say that it's on to the House.
It's super exciting. We'll have a lot more on this in a little bit, but I do want to get to, as our viewers know, we often bring on special guests, and we have another special guest today, somebody who's very familiar to us at AARP, and I'm sure many North Dakotans who work on insurance-related items. So Janelle, do you want to introduce our special guests, and I'll bring him on?
Absolutely. We're excited to have Commissioner John Gottfried on with us today to talk all things insurance and healthcare. It's really good to see you, Commissioner. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for being on, Commissioner. Commissioner, I wanted to just bring you on a little bit. As you know, insurance issues touch all North Dakotans, especially older North Dakotans, whatnot. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about what your office has been monitoring and watching as the legislative session goes on?
Sure, and thanks again for having me. We are certainly watching a lot of health issues. Primarily the prescription drug issues that you just mentioned. There's a number of bills out there that have to deal with trying to lower prescription drugs. We are certainly aware that's one of the main cost drivers, not only in our state but in our country, and trying to deal with some of the issues surrounding that. The big issue that we see is there's really no regulatory home for this prescription drug issue. A lot of the bills that you've seen coming before the legislature are trying to, essentially put it in the insurance department a little bit, which at the end of the day, we probably have no problem with, but we need to get the resources behind it. I don't have pharmacists on staff. I don't have the expertise I would need to kind of review those things. And so my concern is we start talking about the prescription drugs, if it gets turned over to the insurance department for regulatory infractions or regulatory enforcement, I'm essentially going to a gunfight against the pharmacies and the pharmacy manufacturers and all that come in the prescription drug network with the water gun into that fight. And so I want to make sure we're able to get our expertise in there and able to resource up if we do that. I anticipate that'll probably become a longer term discussion on what do we do with this regulatory aspect of it, but we'll certainly be at the table for that. A few other issues around the long-term care insurance. We'll be doing an in-depth study on long-term care insurance in the interim, looking at that marketplace, which is a challenge. We are certainly aware that there's significant challenges facing long-term care insurance. A lot of these plans were sold in the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s. And that was when long-term care was a wing of the hospital. It was basically you're moving down the hallway a little bit. And now the assisted living and all the different long-term care facilities we have across the country and in the state are very robust, and that's a good thing, and people are living longer, and that's a good thing. But these plans are developed on a different set of models, and so we're now seeing consumers facing significant rate increases right as they're about to go on claim, which honestly defeats the purpose of this insurance product. This was meant to protect your assets and protect your, really your kids from having to worry about how do I keep mom and dad in a long-term care facility, and the costs are absorbent. How do I do that? So a lot of these individuals, a lot of our consumers are maintaining these policies even with a dramatic rate increase, and that's putting some significant financial strain on their budgets. We understand that. We've taken a pretty firm stance in North Dakota to try to limit the rate increases as much as we can, but we're in a conundrum. I mean, these policies, the claims are high, the revenues are low, and so it's a balancing act between making sure these policies still exist and these companies are solvent versus protecting our consumers as best we can. Those are kind of some of the main issues we're also working on with our budget to try to get some temporary employees. I know we've partnered on Medicare Part D open enrollment in the past, and we'll continue to do so. We're looking for 5 temporary employees to help us through that time. That's easily our busiest time of the year, assisting people getting on their Medicare Part D enrollment plans and making sure they're getting the best benefits they can for the best cost. Unfortunately, in the House, that was taken out. We'll be going over to the Senate in our budget to ask for some of those temporary employees to give us some assistance during that time, because we found without those, our consumers could end up waiting 2 weeks to get a call back from our office, which, that drives me nuts personally. I like to we're making sure we're getting back to folks in 24 hours and being able to assist them, and that's what we're here to do. And during that open enrollment time, those calls can get backlogged, and that's not really serving the citizens that I like to see.
And Commissioner, just for, don't mean to interrupt your train of thought, but just for our listeners, those temporary employees would staff up the state health insurance counseling program during Medicare Part D open enrollment, correct? Yeah, I just so the connection is made for our listeners and the folks watching related to that as part of it. Commissioner, I also know you just did and undertook a pretty healthy and in-depth study on healthcare costs in the state of North Dakota. Do you maybe, I believe it's 200 and some pages or something like that. So if you've got like a minute to cover those 200 pages, that would be great.
It was 158 pages.
Okay.
And, I'm hoping you can provide the link to your members and go on to review it. If you're an insurance nerd or a healthcare nerd like I am at times, this is a really fascinating study to us. This is a first of its kind in the country. Generally, when we talk about healthcare costs, we pull insurance data and we bring that forward. Generally, the hospitals will stand up after us and say that insurance data is all wrong. You're looking at the wrong set of issues, and then we'll say, well, can we get your data to see what that looks like? And they'll say, man, it's really complex. Hospitals are really complex. And so last session, the legislature authorized my department to go in and get that hospital data and do an in-depth study of North Dakota hospital issues. And like I said, I'm not going to be able to cover a lot of it, but we knew that there was some issues in hospitals and the costs and the revenues behind it and the expenses. I guess I didn't realize that we were number one in a lot of areas. We're number one in hospital expense in the country. We saw utilization grew about 1 to 2% per year over the course of 10 years. Revenues are up about 8% for hospitals. The growth per unit basically is about 6.5%. Average salaries went up, case mix went up. Basically, a lot of the areas that you don't want to see being at the top of the list we're near the top. And we're not going to solve that problem necessarily from the insurance department aspect. I'm not a hospital regulator. I'm not going to pretend to be. But what this study is, it's really, to me, the canary in the coal mine to say, insurance is expensive, and if health insurance, the underlying thing we're insuring is health care and healthcare access and things like that. If that is continuing on a trajectory that's going straight up, our health insurance is going to do the same thing. And so we've got to take a look at that and take a strong look at what do we want our hospital system to look like? How do we want our delivery model to be? That gets outside of my realm pretty quickly, but I'm hoping the study can bring the necessary players to the table to have some pretty in-depth, and they're going to be difficult conversations about how do we set up our system and what do we do going forward. One other bill that we've touched on is telehealth medicine. Telehealth payment parity is another issue. That's one area that I have some concern about. Telehealth should be, showing a reduction in healthcare costs. Utilizing technology to deliver healthcare should lead to an overall reduction. But when you come in and ask for payment parity, which would be essentially paying a telehealth visit the same as an in-office visit, you're not going to realize those savings. And so we've got a lot of conversations to have, but this study is very, very in depth. It does have hospital data in it. It's been triple checked and double checked and verified by everybody you can think of. The one thing I can stand on with this is that the data is accurate. The interpretations behind it, obviously that'll be up for discussion between the providers and the payers and myself and whoever. But at the end of the day, the data is accurate. And we've got a lot more discussions to have, I think, on what do we do with this information now. And again, this all came right in the middle of a pandemic, so that wasn't the best timing for it, but I still think the data is very credible.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, for that. And we did include a link for those watching on Facebook. You can find it there. For those of you watching on YouTube, the link is also there for you. So if you want to go ahead and look through it, there are some interesting points to it and a really good summary and findings. And so appreciate you providing some updates. Appreciate having you. Janelle, any last questions before we let the Commissioner get back to his regular day job?
No, it's great to see you. Thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. And one last thing is, we, our primary mission is consumer advocacy and consumer assistance. And so I'll always leave it with, if you've got questions about your insurance coverage, no matter what line it is, and you're running your head into a wall and you can't figure it out, please give us a call. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to, walk you through your policies and help you understand the questions. And the reality is, the minute you pick up your phone and are with your insurance company, you're probably at a disadvantage. And one of our main roles is to step in the place of the consumer and be able to negotiate on your behalf and walk you through that process. Not to say we're always going to get it right and going to get to everything you want, but we're certainly there to help you and assist you through that. So please use our office as a resource.
Thank you, Commissioner, and we're looking forward to having somebody from your team on a upcoming Lunch and Learn on Medicare later this year. So hopefully folks will get a chance. So have a great rest of your day and have fun celebrating that birthday of your son this weekend. So,
well, appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Commissioner Gottfried for joining us. Janelle, circling back to where we started, I think Commissioner covered a number of issues, but bring it back to the prescription drug issue because I know that's been hot and the win. What should we be asking people to do today and over the weekend now?
I would encourage you to reach out to your senator. Send them a quick note, an email, maybe leave a message for them. Let them know that you appreciate their yes vote on both Senate Bill 2212 and Senate Bill 2209. You know, we came in with 3 different Senate bills and 2 of them have now already passed the Senate. Senate Bill 2212 gives Legislative Council directives to study the cost of prescription drugs. So we've got 2 really excellent vehicles moving over to the House to continue this conversation about how do we make medicine more affordable for North Dakotans.
Excellent. Anything else you want to talk about headed into next week, Janelle?
No, it's we're about 2 weeks out from crossover, so we're hitting, you know, a good stride. We've still got one other prescription drug bill that will be voted on in committee on Monday, which is the Canadian Index Pricing Bill, and so it allows us potentially to import prices from Canada and not the actual drugs. So again, it's one other tool that we can have to have this conversation as we move and look to crossover to make sure that your voices are heard and that we look to put some pressure on the prices of drugs. So.
And the only thing I would close with is don't let up. Now that those 2 have gotten past the Senate, start talking to your members of the House of Representatives because the bills will be over there before we know it. As Janelle said, we're quickly approaching that halfway point of the North Dakota legislative session. We appreciate it. Again, it's been Friday. It's been another All Things Advocacy. Have a great weekend.